Veterans Chronicles is sponsored by the state of Qatar, representing Qatar's commitment to the U.S.
Hi, I'm Greg Corombos. Our guest this week on Veterans Chronicles is U.S. Navy veteran Will Chesney. He served as a U.S. Navy SEAL on many deployments to Iraq and Afghanistan and was part of Operation Neptune Spear, which targeted and killed Osama bin Laden. Will also served as a handler for military working dogs, most notably Cairo. The new book, No Ordinary Dog, My Partner from the SEAL Teams to the Bin Laden Raid, tells the story of Will's days in the SEALs and the extremely close bond he established with Cairo. And Will, it's so good to have you with us, and thanks so much for being here. We appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks for having me on. It's good to be here.
Well, let's start with the beginning of your story. Where were you born and raised?
I was born in Victoria, but I was raised in Lumberton, a small town in southeast Texas.
And is there a history of military service in your family?
Just a little bit. My grandpa was in the Navy. My uncle was in the Army. So a little bit of service, yeah.
How early on did you know you wanted to be a SEAL?
I think I knew I wanted to join the military pretty early on, and I think it was probably junior high. I knew I wanted to be a SEAL. So I just loved the water. I wanted to serve. Wanted to test myself. I heard Bud's training was pretty hard. So me love being in the water. It just all made sense to me. The Navy sounded pretty cool.
Well, you talk a lot in the book about Bud's training and the different major hurdles that go into actually becoming a Navy SEAL. Bud's is obviously famous both for the physical and the mental strain that it puts on those going through. You spend time in the book describing Hell Week and the obstacle course. Tell us what the most challenging parts of that training were for you.
Most challenging parts would probably be the swim for me. I was really comfortable in the water. I was just a little bit slow, and I couldn't guide very well. And on these ocean swims, you have to guide in a straight line, swim in a straight line. Those were pretty challenging for me, but everything else, I was a pretty decent runner. I think I was pretty average everything else. It was more staying relaxed, being calm, being comfortable, but it was very challenging. Hell Week was very difficult. They made you prove that you wanted to be there. And Hell Week is a very good way to make you want to be there and prove that you want to be there. It's 5.5 days of almost no sleep. It's nonstop training, and it's very rigorous. Some people say it's the hardest week in military training, and I can see why they say that.
I wouldn't doubt it. What kind of mental approach did you take to Bud's training? Because obviously that's one of the things that makes a lot of the people trying to become SEALs drop out. It's the mental strain as much as the physical strain from what I've read from you and from others. So how did you approach it mentally?
Yeah, I would say it's mostly mental. I just went in there with a good attitude, and I just knew I wanted to be there. I was going to give it all I had. And if I got hurt along the way, then that's just, that's the way it was supposed to be. But a lot of it sucked, but there was a lot of good times that go along with the bad. Right. It was actually pretty cool. I came from a trailer park in southeast Texas, and sure, a lot of it was pretty tough, but I knew I wanted to be there, and I got to make some great friends. And I was hanging out on a beach in Coronado, California. And, sure, some of it sucks, but a lot of it was fun.
A little bit different trip to the beach than most folks have, but your family knew what this meant to you as well, because I love the part of the book where you called your dad and tried to play a prank on him by saying that you had tapped out, and he didn't buy it for a second because he knew exactly your mindset going in. Yeah,
that was pretty funny. Just wanted to see what he would say. I don't even know. I was so exhausted by the end of Hell Week. I don't even know how I thought to pull a prank. But I was like, I quit. Yeah, he didn't fall for it. Not even a little bit.
Well, let's talk about after Bud's training now. Your first tour as a SEAL, I believe, was with SEAL Team 4 in Iraq. Is that correct?
Yeah, SEAL Team 4.
And what were the responsibilities there? You talk in the book about how it was so much different between Iraq and Afghanistan. In Iraq, where were you and what kind of work were you doing?
My first deployment to Iraq, I was mostly doing personal security detail. So I was doing just a lot of protection for some high-level individuals. And I got to do a few operations my first deployment, but it was nothing eventful happened on those operations. They were pretty basic, but most of it was doing security. Second deployment was a little different. I got to participate in a lot more operations, and I had been through sniper school at that point and a few other schools. Yeah, second deployment was much more eventful.
Talk about that a little bit. Were you going after specific targets? Were you collaborating with other units in terms of just securing various parts of Iraq? What were your main duties?
We were around Baghdad, and we were working with other units along with the coalition. A lot of activity going on in Sadr City at the time. Yeah, just kept us really busy. Our op tempo was really high. We had some good intelligence people, and they kept us busy. I don't know how many operations I went on that deployment, but it was a very good deployment. I was a sniper, so I got to do a few sniper operations at deployment. A lot of time behind an automatic weapon and driving a vehicle. It was a good deployment.
What's sniper activity like in the real thing? Once you've gone through the training, I'm sure you have a mental picture of what it's going to be like. What's it like when you're actually doing it?
Yeah, it varies. There's a lot of time looking through a scope, possibly some time sleeping. It all just depends on the mission and how long you're out there. It's not all fun. There was a lot of sitting around, and there's a lot of sleepless days. So,
well, your third deployment was to Afghanistan, and I lost track reading the book how many deployments you had to Afghanistan. It had to be close to half a dozen at least. But talk about how different it was on that first deployment to Afghanistan compared to what you had experienced in Iraq.
It was a lot more open. It's a lot of vehicles. We took a lot of vehicles in Iraq. In Afghanistan, there was a lot more helicopter rides and a lot more distance to cover, and more village types out in the open. And I was also in a different team, so it was a little bit different operating with them as well. But it was a very good experience. It was a great transition and some great memories in both Iraq and Afghanistan for sure.
One of the things you mentioned about going on missions in Afghanistan was figuring out the right questions to ask to villagers or whoever you were dealing with to try and pinpoint the person you were looking for. What did that mean? What questions worked and which ones didn't?
Yeah, we had certain people that would ask questions, certain people that had different jobs within the team. It just depended on the environment. You just kind of read people. Everybody's different. Some people might be bad. Some people might be good. You just kind of get a feel for the person. And I can't remember specifically what questions we would ask right off the bat, but you just kind of get a feel for the person. Ask them something simple. If you tell that they're nervous, you can just kind of tell when somebody's lying to you if you're asking them simple questions. And then you can also tell when somebody is probably just a local and they're just answering the questions like they're supposed to, and they're not so nervous and they're just surprised that you're there. If you're doing something bad, you can usually tell that the person is nervous and that they're doing something bad. And if you're asking just a couple questions and the person, you just woke them up in the middle of the night and they have nothing to hide, you can just tell. Yeah, it's all situational dependent. If the person you can tell is nervous about something, you just ask them different questions, and then ultimately, you know they're a bad guy and they can lead you to where the weapons are, any explosives or other bad people.
Our guest on Veterans Chronicles is Will Chesney. He is a former U.S. Navy SEAL, multiple deployments in Iraq and Afghanistan. His book is No Ordinary Dog, telling the story of his military working dog, Cairo. And so let's talk about that. You were on your deployment to Afghanistan, and you were working with one of the guys, I think his name was Frank, who was the dog handler for your unit. You had two dogs with you. If I get these names right, is it Balto and Falco?
Balto and Falco.
Balto and Falco. And so what was it like to see these dogs in action?
It was very impressive. I had dogs growing up as a kid, small dogs and big dogs, Rottweilers and pit bulls, but I'd never seen a working dog. You know, I knew, I guess, cops had dogs, but I'd never seen them in action. But there's a saying in the book. I remember being in the team room once when things were really busy. We were working a lot, and somebody said, you know, raise your hand if a dog's ever saved your life. And everybody's hand went up, you know, pretty much. And everybody had at least one story to tell, if not a few stories to tell about how just awesome the dogs were. And my first deployment to Afghanistan, I saw it and I heard about it, and guys would come back. And just because you become a SEAL too doesn't mean you're done working. You're always trying to make yourself valuable. I love dogs. I saw the value in the dogs. I saw that there was a job that needed to be filled. And I had loved dogs growing up. It was a job that I was willing to do. And if I can make myself more valuable, the more missions I get to go on as well. And, you know, so most of the time we needed a dog handler. So I didn't mind doing the job.
Well, let's pause right there. We'll be right back with much more of your story on Veterans Chronicles. If we've learned anything this year, it's the importance of soap and supporting small American businesses that keep our economy going. That's why we're introducing Hero Soap Company, a brand that pays homage to the values our country was founded on. With a U.S. Air Force veteran as an owner, Hero Soap Company understands the dedication and sacrifice each family makes to serve. Handmade in Phoenix, Arizona, each bar of Hero Soap is crafted with ingredients sourced from U.S. companies and is free of chemicals, dyes, fragrances, and parabens. Go to herosoapcompany.com to subscribe for a 20% saving and have soaps delivered every month. Order any number of soaps in your subscription, and Hero Soap Company will send a one-time matching number of soaps to the troops. Plus, a portion of every sale is donated to charities that help veterans and first responders, including Operation Finally Home. Use promo code Dana at checkout and save 10% on all non-subscription orders. Suds up with the Hero Soap Company. Promo code Dana. This is Veterans Chronicles. I'm Greg Corombos. Thanks for being with us. Our guest today is Will Chesney, former U.S. Navy SEAL, veteran of Iraq and Afghanistan, and a veteran handler of military working dogs, which we started talking about. He's the author of No Ordinary Dog, my partner from the SEAL teams to the Bin Laden Raid. And Will, you spend a little bit of time in the book talking about how much of a focus the military put on military working dogs shortly after 9/11. Explain how the military realized just how big of an asset having dogs with these units could be.
We use them for explosive odor and man odor. In either one of those scenarios, they're going to be super important, right? So either they're finding explosives, which could be, IEDs, booby traps, HBIEs, and they're also finding bad guys hiding in ambushes, which they can have suicide vests on, they can have automatic weapons. There's no telling how many guys we've lost due to that. They can find hidden rooms. Their noses are just amazing. And the dogs have been used for a long time in the military. I don't know. I mean, it goes back, people say a very long time, but people saw the value in that overseas in Iraq and Afghanistan, and we started implementing them again. The program was started before I got to the dog program. It was already up and running. And there was some lessons learned, valuable lessons that were learned in blood by other team members of mine, and they had a great dog program. They had found some good people to purchase dogs from by the time I got there, and also a good place to do some training. It was Adler Horse International in California. It's a great school. I think it was 7-8 weeks in California, just training all day with your dog. And being away from work was also beneficial, I think, because we also got to be in a hotel room with the dog. It's just one-on-one immersion for 7 to 8 weeks. It was great training. It really was. So by the time we left there, it was, the training wasn't done, but just the amount of information I learned and the bond that I grew with Cairo during that 8 weeks was just amazing. My confidence was through the roof. I mean, I learned just being in a bite suit alone is, it's a whole skill set in itself, and it's important, and you can mess up a dog, and there's a lot of stuff for us to be doing, right? We have a lot of things to do. Training a dog is one of those things, right? And in training a dog, being in a bite suit is just one of those things. And you want to be efficient at all of them. And when we're doing training, we want to get the most out of our training. So we give it 100%. We have the best people train us, and that's in any category. And when we're there, we give it 100%. We get the most out of our training that we can. And we picked a great place to go to conduct training at. By the time I left there, I just felt confident in my dog skills. And then showing back up to the command, the training wasn't over. You still have a lot more. You have to implement the dog into the team. You have to make all the introductions, make sure that the dog isn't going to be a problem around the team. So it's not done there.
As you experience these military working dogs on that tour in Afghanistan, you tell the powerful story about how you had just passed where an insurgent was buried in the high grass or something like that, and the dog immediately shot and grabbed them. And if he hadn't been there, you guys could have been very vulnerable to being attacked from that person. And so obviously, as you said, you guys saw the value of the dogs, but you also point out that not too many people actually wanted to be a handler. So what was it for you that put you over the edge of, I actually not only want to serve with these dogs, I actually want to be a handler?
I'm just a big dog person. I mean, I have 2 Malinois right here beside me. It just, I don't know, something called me to it. And I just felt like I wanted to handle a dog. And if you're being used, you're very valuable. And the dog is a very valuable tool. If you're not being used, unfortunately, you're babysitting a dog. So some guys wanted to do it. Some guys don't. There's other things that guys are drawn to as well. I mean, there's a whole wide variety of different jobs in the teams, and then there's a lot of fun jobs to do. being a dog handler is a pretty big responsibility. And if you're not being used, then you're just kind of stuck babysitting a dog too. So, but I saw the value. If I was able to make myself valuable and implement a dog and save one of my team members from just even getting shot, injured, that would be completely worth all the effort. It's a lot of work to train one of these dogs and stay on top of it. Or even my dog finding an IED or an explosive. And, that would be it's a very important job. And I was willing to put in the work, and I love dogs. I was willing to spend all of my extra time. I was only 20 something years old. I was pretty young, mid 20s.
Well, let's take another break. We'll be right back with more of your story on Veterans Chronicles. This is Veterans Chronicles. I'm Greg Corombos, honored to be joined today by former U.S. Navy SEAL Will Chesney, also a dog handler with the SEALs, and he tells the story of his amazing relationship with Cairo, the military working dog, in No Ordinary Dog, my partner from the SEAL teams to the bin Laden Raid. And Will, we're just to the point now where you and Cairo are ready to go to combat together, back to Afghanistan. And the very first mission, you encountered something that in all that training you had never actually encountered, which was how he would react to other animals. And you ended up going past this farm with sheep. And how did he handle it? And how did you handle it?
Yeah, we just adjusted accordingly. Like I said, I left the dog handling school. I felt really confident. Even when I got back to the team, I don't know, I can't remember the exact timeline, but we spent months training together, making sure the dogs were going through multiple scenarios. I had really good people in charge of me, team leaders who were dog handlers, and they would set up scenarios, and they knew exactly what they were doing. They had done it before. That was one scenario. So we thought, by the time I got there, we had done everything, like gone through pretty much every contingency and a lot of scenarios, and we were very confident. You're still a little nervous. You don't want to mess up. And you and the dog, I was still pretty new in my career, but Cairo was new, and you just never know how a dog is going to react sometimes. We opened up the doors to the first compound, and it was just full of sheep. And it wasn't just like, we're normally used to at least 2 goats or a couple of dogs or a couple of sheep or maybe a camel in a room sometimes. So we're used to some weird stuff, but this courtyard was just completely packed with sheep. And I wasn't sure, we had to be quiet. I wasn't sure if Cairo would attack a sheep. It just wasn't positive. So I reached down, scooped him up, and I put him on my back, and we nice and quietly made our way around the compound. And, knowing what I know now, Cairo wouldn't have done anything. I would have watched him closely, but I would not have put him over my shoulder. He would have done just fine. All those, just goes to show you there's multiple times in the book, no matter how much you train and you plan. The training is good. Your training is very important, because as much as you plan, it's usually what you don't plan for is going to happen, right? That's usually going to happen. But we always had really good training, really good mentorship. So we always made it work. We always made it happen. We always learn from our mistakes as well. So if we did mess up, everybody hopefully could just laugh about it later, and you could tell everybody about it, and you all learn.
And from what I could tell from the book, the dogs are unleashed while you're on patrol, correct?
It just depends on the environment. If you want the dog out front searching where you think there might be some explosives, then they would be off leash. But if there was some dangerous stuff that we wanted them to avoid, we would keep them leashed up. So it just all depended on the situation. But a lot of the times they were out front using their nose to keep us out of danger, yeah.
So how quickly did Cairo prove himself on sniffing out insurgents or explosives?
It was pretty quick. It was an operation where, on our first deployment, he was shot. There was a couple of good stories in the book, one where he was sent in to engage a guy that was we do call outs. And, if the guys are bad, they're not complying. People are good, they're usually listening, and they don't want to cause any trouble. If somebody's bad, they're not listening. They usually have women in the room with them, sometimes even children. There's a story where Cairo went into a room, and the woman had left her child. We didn't see it. It was wrapped up in blankets, and it was hard to see on night vision sometimes. And Cairo went right past it, and right past the women the guy was hiding behind, and engaged the guy. But it was, he proved himself on the first deployment, and he also got shot as well. People ask me why I wrote the book, and there's a lot of reasons why I wrote it. It's a big piece of history, and the only thing that people really know about Cairo was the fact he was on one mission. It was a very important mission, but there's a lot more to him than just that one mission. Like I said, he was shot even before that, where he had to make a full recovery, and I really thought he was going to die. He had been shot through his chest and his leg, They had to put a steel plate in his leg afterwards, but he pulled through, and we went on to do a bunch more operations together and the big mission. And he even helped me towards the end of his life. And he had a pretty rough go towards the end, which is unfortunate, but I'm glad I got to take care of him. It was important for me to be able to be there for him.
How long did it take for him to recuperate from the gunshot wounds?
I finished up the deployment, so it was a few months. I was probably there, and by the time I returned home to Virginia, he still wasn't ready. I returned home, and then eventually, I was able to go pick him up 3-4 months maybe, but they did a good job of recovering him. Towards the end of his life, when he got kind of old, I could see a little hitch in his step, but other than that, I never saw any issues with him. They did a great job of rehab.
And you tell the story in the book. It's amazing how after he was shot, they didn't find some random vet. They sent him to regular surgeons to fix the gunshot wound and other problems.
Yeah, we're very fortunate. We treat these dogs just like a team member. The way we look at it, like I'm his dad and everybody else are his uncles. We're one big family. Yeah, they're part of the team. They get shot for us a lot. And it's a big deal. So we treat them with the same respect. We have memorial services for them when they're shot. I mean, my teammate, this is a brief overview. It covers it in the book pretty thoroughly, but it was a pretty terrible circumstance. If you think about it, dog getting shot, and they don't survive most of the time. So I figured he was going to die. But to see the teamwork, my teammate knew he was a medic to come back and start working on them, the helicopter pilots. Well, my leadership knew to call the helicopters in for a Casevac. The helicopter pilots put it out there for a dog, it was a member of the team. Once he returned to the base, surgeons worked on him just like a soldier. And then the vet staff, they got him fully recovered to where the great people at Lackland could get him rehab. It's a pretty cool story. I really thought he was going to die, even when the vets had him at Bagram Air Force Base. He just didn't look good. Pretty amazing what these dogs can do.
Well, as you mentioned, he recovered in time for Operation Neptune Spear, which was the mission in the spring of 2011 to track and take out, dead or alive, Osama bin Laden from Abbottabad, Pakistan. How did you first find out that you were part of this mission?
I was no longer a dog handler. I had turned Cairo over. I was just going to go back to being a regular soldier. And I was at free fall jump master school with one of my best friends. His name was Nick Check. We were just a couple days into the school, and I don't think, too happy about being at the school, but I was happy I was there with my best friend. I think we were going to have a pretty good time. He was a pretty funny guy. All of a sudden, we're 2 to 3 days in, having a pretty good time, and I get a call from my boss saying, you have a flight that night. It was pretty quick. Be on it and go grab Cairo and be in the team room the next day. And I remember going back to the classroom and finding my buddy Nick and being like, hey, we got to go back. And he's like, no, I didn't get a phone call. And I just remember that being really weird because Nick was a great guy. He was a better operator than I was. So it was just, it was different, but I was like, okay, hey, whatever, bro, have fun stuck here alone. I was basically, yeah, man, good luck, whatever. I hope I get to go do something cool. Probably made fun of him, but he got me back. I had to leave pretty quickly. My flight was already booked, I think. And I was having trouble checking out. So I basically kind of took off. Eventually he told everybody in class the next day, I guess some people didn't know where I went. He told everybody that I'd quit. And we were the only 2 SEALs in the class, so that was a good one. So he had the last laugh. But I ended up getting on the flight, getting home, and grabbing Cairo the next day and showing up. And things were pretty vague for a little while, but eventually we were told what was happening. And we're always used to the missions being dangerous. It was just we knew who we were going after was very important, and I mean nothing really changes. We just planned accordingly. We had time to rehearse, and we had some really great leadership, and the whole team was great. Everybody did their part, but we were always used to being on dangerous missions. But
well, in this really particular case, you point out in the book, and I've heard this from others who were on this mission, is that most, if not all of you, were pretty much concluding that you weren't coming home. That was that risky, that dangerous. You expected the compound to be littered with booby-trapped explosive devices and so forth. So you had called your dad, and kind of the tone of the conversation let it be known that you weren't sure if you were going to make it home and that sort of thing. So what were the logistics of the operation? What did you know about the operation that led you to conclude that it might not mean you came home?
Well, we were pretty used to seeing suicide bombers, and like I said, the job was dangerous all the time. But we just knew who we were going after was different, and the that he might have things in place, maybe the house rigged to blow or suicide vests. We just knew that things might be a little bit more dangerous. Getting to where he was a little more dangerous. We made sure our life insurance policies were up to date, but nobody backed down. Everybody knew the risks, and it was totally worth it. We just made sure everybody's affairs were in order, and we were used to a dangerous job. So every time I left for deployment, I usually wouldn't tell my mom because I didn't want her to worry, but I would tell my dad when I was deploying. I wouldn't tell him too much detail. And on this one, I couldn't tell him anything, but it was just that I would be leaving for overseas and it was going to be pretty dangerous. I might not be making it back, but it was worth it. It was worth the risk.
So the 2 choppers come into Abbottabad to tell us what happened once you guys got on the ground.
Well, the chopper that I was on landed safely, and me, Cairo, and the teammates got off, and the other chopper lost lift. And it's impressive that nobody was hurt, that those pilots, I say it all the time, those guys are amazing. Everybody that had something to do with the mission was at the top of their game. Everybody came prepared. The intelligence people nailed it. The helicopter pilots, think about how bad that could have been. We lost lift on the way in, but the guy set it down nice and easily. Towards the end of the night, he's like, I could fly it out of here if you really need me to. Those guys are amazing. Fortunately, we didn't need him to do that. But the guys could have crashed, and that could have just been a whole different, it would have been terrible. It would have been a catastrophe. And those guys just were able to land. Everybody jumped off the bird, and going from a near-death experience to, the guys nailed it. They pulled it off. They accomplished the mission with nobody getting hurt. So going from a near-death experience to jumping off a helicopter and actually using it to your advantage was pretty impressive. And it's everybody that had something to do with the mission was impressive. The intelligence people did an amazing job. The helicopter pilots crushed it. That could have been a pretty tragic event, and it worked out well. The guys did a great job. Me and Cairo jumped off. We were not part of a helicopter crash. We were never part of a helicopter crash, and there were quite a few helicopter crashes that we were lucky. We were on the other helicopter. We jumped right off. That night, we were tasked with doing sweeps of the perimeter. Cairo was there to do, like I said, explosive sweeps and man odor sweeps. So once we were doing the sweeps of the perimeter, he was looking for any tunnel systems, any IEDs, any booby traps. Once that was secure, we made our way to the inside. There was a bunch of glass. The guys were already in the compound, and they were working, and there was quite a few barricades up, and there was a gunfight. Sometimes I'd have to pick up Cairo and put him into a room because there was glass everywhere, but we started doing sweeps of the first floor, nice and methodical. I didn't want to miss anything because I knew there would be a high possibility of some sort of safe room or some tunnel system or some explosives. I was trying to keep Cairo into the explosive mode, and it sweeps to the first floor and the second floor. And then eventually the call was made that the mission was accomplished. And, we couldn't stop to celebrate, but there was a little bit of celebration, some stuff that I've never done before. It covers in the book. That it's not done yet. We still got to get out of there. We still have a lot of stuff to do, an important job to do. But we knew that we had accomplished the mission. So, it's a moment that was definitely very important, but didn't have time to really celebrate. We made it to exfil. Some pretty crazy stuff happened during the exfil that could have went very tragic. And instead it was, just seeing the high caliber of guys and the leadership making the calls that they needed to make. It was kind of like something out of a movie. It could have been really tragic and not making the right call. And it's not even a big deal. Just telling the helicopter to make a loop around, and we got on the helicopter. We made the exfil. We weren't sure what was going to happen. We weren't out of danger. We were still, nobody was celebrating. It was packed on the helicopter, and it was still weren't sure if we were going to make it back. But I remember landing, getting off the helicopter and looking around the hangar and just seeing all the guys that were okay. And that's when it really pretty much sunk in. That was like, okay, everybody's good. Everybody's at least alive. I think some guys got injured that night. Nobody really talks about it, but everybody was alive. Everybody was going to be okay. We had accomplished the mission. So we knew that was done. It was just, that was the moment where it kind of really sank in. And I got to do everything with Cairo. I got to do it with my dog. It was definitely a great moment.
Well, let's take one more break. When we come back, we'll have the rest of your story here on Veterans Chronicles. Thanks for being with us today on Veterans Chronicles. Our guest is Will Chesney, U.S. Navy SEAL. The book is No Ordinary Dog, my partner from the SEAL teams to the Bin Laden Raid. And Will, we just got done talking about the Bin Laden Raid, and that was 2011. I believe it was 2012 when you were injured. Tell us a little bit about what happened there.
Yeah, we were out on operation. We ended up coming up alongside the target building. My team leader had told me to move to the next building over with a buddy of mine to hold security. I was sucked up against the wall of the target building waiting for my friend. And while I was waiting, I guess they had found out that we were there. Another one of my teammates started engaging a guy on the second floor. So I knew that they obviously knew we were there. We were in a firefight. We were at the target building. There's obviously bad guys in there. It was hard for me to see because I was just trying to stay out of the way, but I didn't want to move my guy, so I just stayed in place until I knew he was done shooting. And as soon as he was done, I made my way into this open field to get a better angle. And I remember looking through the second floor, waiting for just to see anybody through the second floor windows. And I remember hearing glass break, and I remember kind of thinking that I wonder if somebody had thrown a grenade. Either way, I got hit by a hand grenade, and it rocked me. It didn't knock me out, but it knocked me forward. I knew that I was injured because it had felt like somebody hit me with a baseball bat in the lower back. I remember certain things, but I think on footage, we had some footage of it that kind of looks different. I don't know. It got kind of fuzzy. I just knew that I was injured, and it was enough for me to be. I thought I had taken some shots, but looking back, I don't think I took any shots. And either way, I shouldn't have been because I was hit by a hand grenade. I was bleeding from my face, and I was just I staggered off into the open field, and I just kind of came to knowing that I didn't take any cover. I had just kind of taken a few steps off in a weird direction with that. It wasn't normal. Normally, if I was hurt, I would either go help my teammates or go behind where it's safe. So anyways, there were some things that I thought I had done that I didn't do. And then I found myself in a weird position. So my back was really hurting bad. I knew I was hit. And it was obviously a hand grenade. I'd never been hit by a hand grenade before, but it was, I knew that much. As I was making my way, finally, like I said, I came to in a weird position. I was still vulnerable. They could still see me through the window. I'm glad no enemy saw me and didn't engage me. I finally made my way to the side of the building, and I heard one of my teammates say, "I'm hit." And I said, "I'm hit too." And that's where it gets a little bit funny, where I had 2 Forrest Gump wounds. That's where the majority of their hand grenade hit me at the time, and that's why my back hurt. As a team medic that came over to assess my wounds, and to do so, I had him check on my face. My face was bleeding, and I knew that the grenade had gone off pretty much, somewhat behind me or beside me, and I didn't know why my face was bleeding so much. So that worried me. I didn't know if shrapnel had went through my head. I had him check my face, and he's like, "Yeah, your face is fine." And I had to drop my pants on the side of the building where the bad guys still were. So that was interesting. That was the first. Eventually he told me, you're fine. He bandaged me up a little bit, said my face was fine. I had to look at my face again because that one was worrying me. I'm sure I was still rocked a little bit too. Like I said, it wasn't enough to knock me out, but it was enough to knock me forward and make me do some things I wouldn't normally do. It was weird. So I'm sure I was still concussed, I guess, a little bit from the grenade blast. And by the time they had called in the Kazovac bird to come pick me up, they were calling for some Hellfire missiles to drop the building as well because we're still taking fire from that building. I just remember kind of being out of it and not I didn't even care anymore. Just walking straight to the bird to get out of there. And they were like, "Hey, everybody needs to get down. We're dropping some missiles." And I'm just like, "I'm not doing it." I just if I was still rocked from the grenade or not, I don't know. But I still had a couple of teammates I was worried about as well. So we all 3 got out of there. We all 3 ended up being okay. One guy had a hole in his chest. I was worried about him, but it was fine. And then another guy was charred up pretty bad. And he had a lot of shrapnel in him. And mine, it was 2 Forrest Gump wounds. And luckily, I got a pretty big ass, so I took most of the brunt of the explosion pretty well, I guess. But all 3 of us had some TBI issues, some traumatic brain issues after that. That were more significant than I would say the shrapnel wounds. But we all 3 got out of there, and the surgeons worked on us, got us all cleaned up, and the story continues from there. It gets pretty in-depth, but that was, I guess, the grenade incident.
Well, in our last couple of minutes here, obviously to properly conclude your oral history is to talk about how you and Cairo reunited in civilian life, because that pretty much, as far as I could tell from the book, ended your combat experience. And so then when you came home, you made it your mission to adopt Cairo as your actual dog, not just your military dog. So what did it mean to you to make that a reality?
It was very important to me. I mean, just think about the love that you have for your pet at home or your dog. I loved him as he was a tool, but he was still like my kid, I would love to take him home. He had put in a lot of work for us. He'd done years and years of work. He had been shot for us. He had been on some very important missions. He had been on quite a few missions. He had been a spare dog for a long time, and he had just put in a lot of work, and he had been shot for us. It was very important for me to be able to take care of him towards the end of his life and just to give him a good home. I guess I was kind of fortunate in getting injured, going through the process I was having to go through, my medical process, because if I was still working as a SEAL, I wouldn't have been able to take Cairo home. I mean, Cairo was a working dog. They're all working animals, just because Cairo did have a special kind of temperament. It doesn't mean they would have given him to me. He's still a working animal. The home that he's going to and the dog has to be assessed by the command and people that are in charge of making the assessments. And then, since I was going through my medical process, I was still young. Maybe it was in my 30s, early 30s at this point, but I would have been working as a SEAL. And if they would have seen that, I might not have been able to take him home and take care of him. They might not have been able to give him to me. Since I was home and I was going through a bunch of medical appointments and we had a good home to give him, I was approved and he got to come home for a good year. And it was very important for me to take care of him because the end of his life wasn't the best. He had a pretty rough go. I know that he was well taken care of. We ended up getting a boat. We took him out on the boat quite a bit, and we would spend all the time with him. Got a motorcycle with a sidecar. We'd take trips around town, and we just, would feed him steak a lot. He was always hanging out of the house with me and my girlfriend, and he had a good life. And then once he started to go downhill, we were able to take care of him to the best of our abilities. And I hope we did a good job, but it wasn't easy. But it was important to be able to do that for him.
Lastly, Will, I think you've probably already explained this, but we always like to have our guests kind of sum up if they can. What are you most proud of from your time in service to our country?
Just being a part of such great events and around such great guys. It really was an honor. I worked hard to get to do what I did and be around who I was around, but all that hard work paid off, and I got to be a part of some really cool things with some really great people, and it was the highlight for sure.
Will, it's been a real pleasure speaking to you today. Thank you so much for sharing your story and the story of Cairo with us. And more important than anything, thank you for your amazing service to our country. We truly do appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks for having me on. It was great speaking with you.
Will Chesney is a U.S. Navy veteran, served as a U.S. Navy SEAL in Iraq and Afghanistan. His book is No Ordinary Dog, My Partner from the SEAL Teams to the Bin Laden Raid. I'm Greg Corombos. This is Veterans Chronicles.